You're listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio, featuring the interactive interview, courtesy of WrestlingEpicenter.com.
What's up, everybody? This is Matt Stryker, and you are listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio.
Interactive Wrestling Well, hello there. Welcome to another edition of Interactive Wrestling Radio right here on WrestlingEpicenter.com and YouTube. My name is James Walsh, and this week we have a special guest for you from the world of Lucha Underground and a former WWE superstar. Matt Stryker will be joining us for his first visit to us. Pretty cool as we had Matt on, and the first thing he said to me is, dude, I listened to your Ted DiBiase interview. That's really cool when you're getting a chain of guests in a row who have listened to us before and referenced something we did in the past. That's really a cool thing. So thanks to Matt Stryker for saying that to us, and thank you for the interview, as well as thanks to Lucha Underground for helping set this up. Again, I encourage everybody to check out Lucha Underground every Wednesday night at 8 o'clock Eastern on the El Rey Network. And also, if you're in the Phoenix area, check out Lucha Underground at the Arizona State Fair at the Phoenix Fairgrounds at 12 o'clock on Sunday, the 23rd of October. We'll be there, and hope everybody will check it out. Again, I want to thank Lucha Underground for setting up this interview. I want to thank Matt Stryker for joining us. And again, check out Lucha Underground. It's theatrical wrestling in a different presentation, and it really is a breath of fresh air in an industry that kind of needs it right now. Anyway, that's enough of me talking. You'll get enough of that in the recap show. So for now, enjoy our interview with Matt Stryker.
Hola, this is the Wednesday Night Delight, Johnny Mundo, and you're listening to Interactive Wrestling Radio. Welcome back to Interactive Wrestling Radio. On the Newsmaker line with us right now is the announcer for Lucha Underground, which I'll be checking out at the Phoenix Center this weekend. Matt Stryker's on the line with us. Mr. Stryker, are you there?
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. What's up?
It's great to have you on the show. I don't know why I couldn't think of the word State Fair just then. Phoenix State Fair, Arizona State Fair at the Phoenix Fairgrounds, for those listening. Big house show for Lucha Underground. I don't know if you're going to be there, but I definitely want to talk about Lucha Underground, which you're a major part of. So let's start out there. First of all, how do you enjoy calling the action, the fast-paced action of Lucha Underground?
Well, first is that I will be under the mask as Drago at the Phoenix State Fair, Arizona State Fair, so just look for me there. As far as calling it, I love it. I'm like a little kid, you know. I really just, I sit down and I sit next to my friend Vampiro, and we talk about wrestling, and it really is a lot of fun. That's as basic as I can give it to you.
Now, I watch that every week, and every week Vampiro says something that makes me go, what? Wait, did he just say that? He's got to be the most unorthodox announcer that you've ever worked with.
Yeah, he's I mean, I guess that term, orthodox, you know, I mean, if every announcer put on a suit and sat down and put on their big boy voice and spit cliches, we wouldn't have any potpourri to life. So I think Vampiro is a spice, and yeah, I really do. I love working with him, and he is the only of his kind that I've worked with. Although William Regal is similar in a more refined way, if that makes sense.
Is he really? Well, I guess
yeah,
he's a little off the cuff. I guess he does go a little. You don't really know what he's going to say next, I guess. All right. Well, my co-host couldn't be here today. He works just the other side of Washington, D.C., and he's in traffic right now. So he couldn't make it, but he had a question that he wanted me to ask you. It's a little vague, but I hope that it makes sense. And the question is, what all goes into putting together this incredibly cinematic 1-hour broadcast of Lucha Underground. And how does it differ in your perspective, because you've been an announcer for various other promotions, namely WWE, how does it differ from the way that they operate?
Well, two parts, I guess. What goes into it would be, I think what most people their eyes are being attracted to is that there is a Hollywood presence, a certain type of camera person, a certain type of director, a certain type of mind that is seeing this to something that we as wrestling fans have only really seen in 2 or 3 different ways, but this has such a different look to it, and I think that's the first part as to what goes into the difference. Second, what was the second part of the question?
Just how is the I guess the production process, how is that different than, say, working on a WWE product like SmackDown or Superstars?
Well, I look at that, those things that you mentioned are wrestling shows, and in that regard, in that theater, be the wrestling announcer, as many before me and after me do and will do, to varying degrees of greatness. On the flip side here, I feel like Lucha Underground, I almost feel a little more like an actor, if you will, a little more playing more of a part, a role. Who is Matt Stryker in the Lucha Underground temple? Well, he really is just your kind of wrestling announcer, but with a little bit of 3 or 4 days worth of a beard on his face, and that's what I try to go for. I don't ever look at the two as the same. The preparation for a WrestleMania is zero similarity to the preparation for an Ultima Lucha, for instance.
Very cool. You mentioned that you're going to be playing the role of El Drago on the show, which is very cool. You might, if you do a meet and greet, have my 7-year-old son. He just had a birthday recently. Ask you where you got your mask, because he thinks that's the coolest thing. That's his favorite character on Lucha Underground. So that's a pretty cool thing.
Now you see, that's a great thing. Like, that was an organic story you just gave me, but I was the same way when I first saw Drago on Lucha Underground. I was just like, whoa! I became your 6-year-old kid, and I think we all love wrestling, and we also all love movies and TV. And this gives us that good, warm feeling of when we were 6 or 7 and we started to discover the shows that we love, or the wrestlers that we enjoyed. It's pure. I don't know. It's just something that fills me.
I agree with you. And I'll tell you what, and this is the truth, I can't get my whole family to sit down and watch wrestling with me, except for Lucha Underground. I'll watch any wrestling that's on, literally anything. I'm just a junkie for it.
Right.
But the kids will sit down, and even my wife, who long since has checked out of wrestling, she says it's the way wrestling should be, with larger-than-life characters and stories that are told. And, I love it because, as well, and you might not take this as a compliment, but some of the backstage stuff is as cinematic as, say, the Dungeon of Doom with the Hulk Hogan stuff from the mid-'90s. And it's just, only this time it really works, as opposed to that stuff, which didn't necessarily always click. But, man, I really enjoy watching it. It's just a completely different approach to wrestling. I do have some questions for you about your earlier career, and you mentioned you're going under the mask, and this past weekend you were under the mask in House of Hardcore, and it reminded me that the first time I saw you was all the way back in 3PW, working for Propane Pro Wrestling, and I believe you guys worked the ECW arena back then. Thoughts on your time in Propane Pro Wrestling and the backstage environment, working for such a different set of owners?
Well, you mentioned House of Hardcore, and I think that everything in our life is a circle. So when I was working for 3PW and doing a lot of shows in the ECW arena, a lot of that magic in that locker room remained from the ECW guys. There's something different about guys that passed through ECW and that were there for longer than what we say a cup of coffee. Every time you come across them, they're good, decent human beings. They really are. Something Paul Heyman was putting in that Kool-Aid, it was a positive thing. So all those experiences, that brotherhood, that fraternity, House of Hardcore's slogan is no politics, no BS, just wrestling. And that's what it was, back then for me in 3PW and a lot of other independents. It was just like, go out there, do your thing, have a good time, work for the good of the entire show, not just your match, and give the people 2.5 hours of, I had a good time for my, X amount of dollars. That's what it was for me, and that's what I learned from those kind of places. And it pays forward for places like House of Hardcore and Lucha Underground, because that's the vibe in the locker room. Everyone wants to do better than the match before them. It's awesome.
Very cool. And you were a bit of a parody master back then, Ultimate Warrior, amongst others that you did great parodies of. And I think it really showed that you really love this business. You're as they say, student of the game.
I appreciate that. I'm doing a parody of a wrestling announcer every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. on the El Rey Network. But, yeah, I think the minute we lose our, sound a little hippie, the minute we lose our wanderlust, I mean, we're done. There's a saying, what is it, we do not grow old because we stop playing, we stop playing. Well, we do not stop playing because we grow old because we stop playing. I always want to be that 7-year-old kid that saw Superfly Snuka for the first time. I always want to be your 6-year-old son that loves Drago. I don't ever want that to go away, and I don't think any of us do.
Awesome.
That's my theory.
That is incredible, man. I got to ask you, from somebody who lived the dream, from somebody who went under the big bright lights of WWE for the first time, it came off to me on camera, and I hope you don't mind me saying so, like you were living your dream. Like this was everything that you had worked for. And we know your backstory with your teaching history and everything like that. That was, brought out onto TV and to newspapers. Mm-hmm. But it seemed like it was a huge, huge part of your life that you got to live that dream and work for WWE. What was it like for you that first time to step out in front of those big bright lights?
Before I do an interview with anyone, if I can, I take a minute and I research them. And I recall a long time ago an interview you did with Ted DiBiase. I had no idea it was you. I just went and looked you back up maybe 45 minutes ago before we sat down to do this. And there's something about each called according to his purpose. It was, I can't speak for what it was because I was just in this wave of this is going to happen. It was the greatest thing in the world to me. It still is. Not to give away too much. Every morning when I wake up, I say a little prayer, and then afterwards I say, thank you for this life that you're allowing me to live. Like, if I don't get to go to heaven, I didn't do too bad here. But if I do, can you imagine how great that kingdom will be for me personally? You know what I mean? So I count my blessings. I really do.
Awesome. That's a great answer. And by the way, that means a lot to me that you guys go back and listen to us. I think the first guy who ever came to me and said, I want to do your interview because I listened to your show on the airplane was Lance Cade, who unfortunately left us a long time ago. But it's always incredible to me that some of the things that we record here are heard by the guys who are out there doing it. So that means a lot to me. Thank you for that compliment.
No worries, man. Of course.
All right. And when I wrote these questions, I must have been in a bad mood.
What did I do? That's another thing, too, man. I don't get it. People really, I guess it's a testament to the job being done. I think Stephanie McMahon said that when she's a villain on TV and she hears people boo, she likes it. People really believe that, I'm people guys come up to me in the street sometimes, and I'll be like I take my grandma shopping sometimes. I'll be my grandma, and they're like, whoa, you're going to try and fight me right now? It's an act, dude. Relax. So.
No, it wasn't an insulting question. It was just that I remember when we were on the air on the AM radio station that we were on at the time, talking about when you brought your classroom to the show, and everybody was comparing you to Dean Douglas. I guess my question would be, who does a better teacher character, yourself or Shane Douglas?
Oh, my God. Shane's been in business longer than me. He has seniority. If you ever have sat down and talked to him, he really is a genius. So it's not for me to say who does something better. Let people decide, I suppose. I don't know.
And to answer your question, yes, we did, and it was almost as long as the Ted DiBiase one. It was a lot of fun. Incredible guy. All right, so I've always wanted to ask you this because I remember I was watching a Royal Rumble that you called, and you were referencing the fact that there was life outside of WWE with some of the things that some of the competitors had accomplished, and that was virtually unheard of for WWE programming, especially at the time. Maybe not so much now with the network and everything like that, but at the time it seemed to be unheard of that you would reference that somebody won a championship elsewhere other than in WWE. Did you get encouraged to do that, or were you discouraged from doing that?
I had neither. I really was able to get in, get out. Instead of going back up the ramp after the show is done to make sure that you see Vince and get your pat on the back, I always went what we call side ramp. For several reasons. One, it's going to be a mad rush to leave. I wanted to get out of there. And I knew I might have said a thing or two that maybe might not have been. So after 24 hours or so, maybe he'll forget about it or something of this nature. It was never subversive. It was never out of malice. It was just how I speak. Again, back to how Vampiro and I sit and call wrestling. It's like two guys sitting on the couch and someone does a claw. How do you not start talking about the Von Erichs? And then how does someone a little older not start to say Killer Kowalski? It's a natural progression of the art. So I never really had any encouragement or discouragement either way on that. It was just a part of my personality that everyone seems to adore.
Well, they sure do. Now, you said you're doing a parody of a ring announcer, but you're still one of the best there is right now, and I've said that for several years. I guess my question would be, do you enjoy getting behind the booth and putting the headset on and being an announcer, or do you enjoy putting the mask on and getting in the ring and being a wrestler?
Both, because I'm still the little boy. The little boy still wants to jump off the couch onto his dad. But I also have a little bit of understanding of what it does to the body. And if I can sit and exercise my mind and have fun for an hour with Vampiro watching, for my money, arguably some of the very best athletes, bar sport, in the world. I mean, think of some of the things the guys do. So there's things in both, but I guess as I get older, I'd have to say that announcing makes more sense. If not, I feel like my mom would hit me in the back of the head.
Oh, man. So we just had on a few guests who had worked with Lucha Underground in the past, Johnny Mundo being one of them, who is still obviously the biggest, or one of the biggest stars of Lucha Underground. He mentioned in our interview that he sees so much future in Lucha Underground that he's not actively seeking employment by WWE. He said he doesn't think he'll ever need to go back. He's happy where he is. From somebody like yourself who does a lot of other things as well, are you kind of in the same boat? You're saying, hey, I believe in this, and you're a believer as well as those people in the crowd are.
I have learned in my life to stay in the moment. If you think about the future, that's anxiety. If you think about the past, that's depression. And also, I was raised on, if you want to hear God laugh, tell him your plans. If you asked me 3 years ago if I'd be here for Lucha Underground, what are you talking about? So I've learned to never speak for the unknown because I'm incapable of knowing. So I'm going to stay right here.
Well, I take it everybody's looking forward to what's coming up to Aztec Warfare. We're heading into that really quickly here in Lucha Underground. I guess any thoughts of or promotions that you want to say about what we can expect from Lucha Underground for the remainder of Season 3?
Honestly, I think it really speaks for itself, and word of mouth is the best thing in the world. There's 1,000 things you can do out there, but everyone seems to be really bored. So for an hour, watch this show with someone and see their reaction because, I mean, we're all having a good time, so everyone else should join in.
Awesome, man. Well, I told the lady over at Lucha Underground I would only keep you for about 15 or 20 minutes, and I'm going to hold you true to that. I bet Ted DiBiase wishes I had said the same thing to him. But I want to.
If you have a bunch more questions, I'll give you. I owe it back to you for the service you give out to the people. I can definitely give you 5-10 more minutes of my time. But if you want to go, you can go. But
trust me, I'd be happy to stay for as long as as you'd have me. I guess my question would be, from where you came from, and we kind of covered it a little bit. But when you got the opportunity with WWE, you didn't kind of just go in there and start working, heat matches. You were immediately put in there with Kurt Angle, who is perhaps the best in the world, especially at the time, and I'm going to argue probably still one of the best in the world. What was it like for you to go from the independent scene, working USA Pro Wrestling, and then getting on in the car and heading over to another independent that same night to work with arguably the best in the world that night?
Wow, I'm glad we got the extra time in here because it goes back full circle. It's the very same thing that's happening on Lucha Underground. they, being WWE, gave me this kid that, like you said, yeah, I was going place to place, doing my thing, falling down, getting up, falling down, getting up, the whole 9 yards, and then I had this match with Kurt Angle, and you get thrust into the spotlight. You can argue that the same thing happens at least once or twice a month in the Lucha Underground's programming, because you didn't know a guy like Prince Puma or some of these new stars that get built, Phoenix, Mil Muertes. So I just think it's full circle that companies are still going to do this. We're always going to need guys to come in and wrestle. We never know who that next guy is going to become. You have to wait 15 years and look back and be like, oh, because, CM Punk came out at WrestleMania 22 in a Tommy gun as part of someone's Battle Royal entrance or something to this effect. But you don't know. So to your question, when I had that opportunity, what was it like for me? I didn't know, but I knew enough to just be a part of it and keep my mouth shut for the most part and go with it. And Lucha Underground is now that new wave where each week your son is going to have a new favorite, and some kid is going to discover Sexy Star for the first time. So that's
That's something I typed in that was pretty cool. When I was watching, when I received the press release for Lucha Underground just 2 weeks ago, and it was Jack Evans against a female wrestler, Sexy Star. I looked at, I think it was Sexy Star. Might have been. I think it was Sexy Star. I'm going to stick with Sexy Star. I put in there Andy Kaufman is somewhere smiling as we have intergender match in the main event. I guess, how do you feel about guys versus girls, and do you think it speaks to the current, I guess, political climate that we have going on right now?
Well, for me, it's different. I have 4 sisters. I was raised with strong women. I have a strong grandmother and mother. So that's something I think, again, maybe it's relative, because to me, it never was an issue. There never was a quote-unquote weaker sex. So somewhere along the line, someone with a newspaper or a television set, they put out this myth that that's the case. So I really am the wrong person to speak on that, because to me, my sister Corey beat my ass a lot. So I only know strong women.
Right. Exactly. I have an older sister too, so I'm kind of in the same boat. But it's still, when you see a guy like Johnny Mundo, who's got, instead of a 6-pack, I guess an 18-pack, who comes in and punches a woman. Granted, she's an athletic woman, but punches a woman. You kind of, as a guy, at least me, it's like a sensory overload for a second. You're like, wait a minute, did that just happen? And that's how I look at it anyway.
His punch, and then you start to say, all right, either that guy can't hit, or that is one tough, and then you don't go to woman, man, or whatever. You just see a fighter now, because once you lose that, and it's made of sugar glass, this perception of females that whoever is somewhere along the line try to put it out there on society, but it's very fragile, because once you tap at it a little bit, we all know strong women. We all know weak men. We all know strong men, and we all know, so to me, it's so foreign. I talk about this with a friend of mine a lot. Maybe I'm out of the loop here, but I've always known strong women, so I've never seen them as anything but. I'd be afraid not to. My mom used to hit me all the time. I was such a bad kid.
Well, I think that we have a similar backstory. I only have one sister, but I think we have a similar backstory growing up in the Northeast. So I think I totally see where you're coming from with the tough women side of things. And if you ever doubt that, take a girl from Jersey out on a date sometime. Okay, I'm going to wrap up with just this last question, and it is kind of with the way that you approached it, and I'm going to go back to it, the way that you would leave the exit side left, essentially, when you leave from calling a match. The departure from WWE, similar to question to how big of a deal was it when you got there. When you left, was it crushing to you? Did it hurt you at all? And did you know that you were going to land firmly on your feet with a very strong company like Lucha Underground and have other opportunities like we mentioned with House of Hardcore?
Well, that's where I first began to dive into this whole don't worry about the future, it's only anxiety, the past, depression kind of thing. And there's things in Scripture, I read every day that kept reinforcing for me that worry will do nothing for you. But before I was enlightened to that concept or that defense, I cried because I felt like it was it was a dream that I got there, and then it was like you got woken up, or awoken, whatever the right way of saying that is. So I did, and I remember my friend Mike Johnson, he interviewed me like the next day. And Tommy Dreamer was like, listen, just come to the show, be around people, whatever. I was like, fine. And Mike's, bless his heart, he asked me, do you care if I record? I'm like, no. And then right there, I was like, wait a minute. So it was rough, but it just shows that if you feel something for something, then you're emotionally invested in it. And that's kind of like the thing to life, is finding things to get emotionally attached to in a safe and healthy way. So it was upsetting, but it was enlightening. I had no idea, like I said, that Lucha Underground was going to be a concept. But then again, if you want to hear God laugh, tell him your plans, man. I'm just a bag of flesh and bones. I don't know a darn thing. So I'm just going to shut up and just go for the ride.
All right. Well, man, I'm looking forward to Sunday. I got to tell you, it came out of nowhere. It wasn't advertised or anything like that, and I just got the email from Lucha Underground, which I promote every week on our website. And looking forward to this. I think you guys are going to get a big crowd, and I'm hoping that Sunday at the Arizona State Fair, I got it right this time, turns out to be a big success for you guys, and you'll consider running Arizona in the future, because there is a huge wrestling market in this area that is very seldomly tapped. I know we had a WrestleMania years ago, and we had a SummerSlam a couple of years ago as well. But for the most part, except for the occasional WWE show, it's a very untapped market, and you guys could tap into something big in this Southwest down here, other than outside of Los Angeles, in Arizona.
Well, I know your Arizona area well, and I will end with this, that I have had more than a good time outside of a place called Marley's. I don't know. There you go.
Hey everybody, this is Ted DiBiase, the $1 Million Man. Remember me? And you're listening to the Interactive Interview.
Welcome back to Interactive Wrestling Radio right here on WrestlingEpicenter.com. My name is James Walsh, and Patrick is, I guess, still in traffic. Really, guys, if you listened to our show last week, I swear to you, I haven't fired him. He's still part of the show, but he has a really, really difficult commute. And unfortunately, our recording times are typically the times that he's in the car. So we'll get Patrick back on our show here one of these days coming up soon. In the meantime, you still got James Walsh here, the master of puppets, if you will, the master of ceremonies. And the reason I'm here is to discuss the interview we just did and recap it with Matt Stryker. Matt Stryker was on our show to promote Lucha Underground, which you can catch every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Eastern on the El Rey Network. And if you don't watch the El Rey Network, you're missing out on some good stuff. Classic horror, cult classic movies. In the early daytime, they have cult classic television shows like Airwolf on. I mean, you really got to watch El Rey Network. There's some great stuff on there. And the best thing that they have on there, of course, is Lucha Underground. Lucha Underground. For my Sonic fans out there. So check it out every Wednesday night. Best wrestling on TV. Well, at least one of the best wrestling shows on TV. And certainly the one that has the most fresh approach to professional wrestling, bar none. For those TNA fans out there that maybe have not checked out Lucha Underground, the belief was that Final Deletion, which is so huge for TNA, and I couldn't be happier for them for that success, was borrowed by Matt Hardy of the Lucha Underground approach, the very cinematic, very over-the-top approach. And Lucha Underground is full of stuff like that. So if that excited you and rejuvenated you in any way, you got a lot of rejuvenation to do simply by watching Lucha Underground. So I encourage you to do so. We will be attending a Lucha Underground house show this Sunday, October 23rd, 2016, here in Arizona at the Arizona State Fair at the Phoenix Fairgrounds. Doors open at 12, so we will be there checking it out. I hope that if you're in the Phoenix area, you will be too. And if you see us walking by, I'll be the guy in there wearing the Macho Man sunglasses. Yes, I said Macho Man sunglasses. Yeah, I'll be wearing them to the tilts. Yeah. And the cream always rises to the top. Ha-ha, yeah. Shark Tooth sunglasses I'll be wearing. So you'll see me. I probably will stand out. I also wanted to discuss this week the news of the week. And for those who haven't watched wrestling this week, you might not have heard about the big news, which was the return of Goldberg to WWE on Raw. It occurred to me that one of the biggest arguments I had on the history of our episodes of Wrestling Epicenter, when we were on AM radio on The Blaze, Chuck Hellstein, Chuck D, and I had a big debate, and we discussed Goldberg's theme song. And I said WWE overdoing his theme song, making it somber, even though it had the same bah, 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 that whole thing going on. It was not the same because it was made more somber. It was overproduced. It was Pyromania from Def Leppard or Hysteria from Def Leppard instead of Pyromania. Overproduced, overly done, and in the end, it loses something in translation. Well, what song did they use on Raw? They could have heard me. They went back to his real WCW theme song. And it was intense, man. That was an intense segment. But here's the problem. You know why I never really liked the movie Titanic? Because the outcome was known. You know why I don't really like this return of Goldberg? The outcome is known. What you're going to see is Brock Lesnar get his win back. It is Hollywood Hogan against the Ultimate Warrior at Halloween Havoc 1998 all over again. I just hope that if they have flash powder in the gloves, that they don't go off in the guy's hand. And that the pay-per-view doesn't go over the 3-hour time limit and the best match of the night gets missed. And that match actually had Goldberg in it. The best match of the night was Goldberg and Diamond Dallas Page. The pay-per-view went over 3 hours, so most pay-per-view subscribers didn't get to see the main event that they paid for. Very ironic, if you ask me. You know how I got to see it all? Because I had an illegal cable box. I guess I can say that now, right? All right. I wanted to also discuss the comment that I made during the show. Since we're talking about WWE, I'll stay on that topic until I finish up with a TNA comment. I mentioned about women being featured heavily due to the political climate. Now, I think if you listen to this show or follow me on Facebook, you probably realize that I'm a Donald Trump guy. I am not a Hillary Clinton guy. Believe me. I am definitely not a Hillary guy. Now that I've also come to learn that discussing politics in public in a forum of which it does not pertain is a great way to piss off half your audience. So I'm not going to get into it too much, except to say this. It's a good thing that females are being featured more heavily on a wrestling show. But the misconception that we're not all staring at them just the same as Jerry Lawler screeched like he'd never seen a naked woman before is just not there. You better believe Sasha Banks, she bends over, we're looking. Something falls out, we're going to pop for it. And that's just the way the world works. Now, I've seen Sex in the City, and I'm going to tell you this now. Women are no different. Plus, how many times have they said things like, did you see that guy's butt? You heard a girl say that. I guarantee you have. We all are this way. Men are more filthy than women. There's no denying that. However, it's tougher for women to be taken seriously in a wrestling ring because they're scantily clad, as the men are, but men seem to see through that. That seems to be okay. That's the uniform, if you will. Whereas with the women, women are still women. It's not just the uniform to us, and it doesn't miss our male visors. We get it. We see it. Anyway, my point was simply to say this. I'm perfectly fine, in essence, with something like Sasha Banks and Charlotte main eventing the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view. I'm okay with it. But if it's only because of the preparation for Hillary Clinton, which is just a scary thought, the way that I think that it was in preparation for Hillary Clinton to have all the Ghostbusters characters become women in a movie that sucked and nobody went to go see, that I don't like. So it's a fine line that WWE has to walk. Now, I know WWE and Linda McMahon are big donors to Donald Trump's campaign, but they're not stupid either. They want to capitalize on every opportunity they can, and this is a social movement that is an opportunity to capitalize. Even Gail Kim on Impact, the Impact after Bound for Glory, said something like, "Oh, times are changing." They might be. They might be changing, and I might not like it. In fact, I hate it. But it's good for the fact that women who are incredible athletes are getting the opportunity to shine. But it is still, and I'm going to say this, and I mean it, and I don't care what flack I get, wrestling is still a man's sport. And when this fad ends, women will not be featured heavily, and men still will be. I can hear the boos from here. Finally, let's finish up with TNA, who apparently is not finishing up. From what it sounds like here, Billy Corgan has started a lawsuit with TNA Impact Wrestling, Dixie Carter, Surge, her husband, and so on and so forth, over the money that he lent to the company in the early portion of the summer. Now, another company has come around who runs the Fight app, who is now offering to pay back his money in exchange for basically having the streaming rights to the TNA catalog, which they pretty much already have. So it sounds to me, stripping it down, like TNA now has a new donor, a new financial benefactor, if you will. It's good. I'm glad that they have that benefactor. Now, here's the problem. I get the feeling that Corgan invested in TNA in the hopes of getting majority share. Dixie Carter took a back seat to Billy Corgan in that hope, which may have been misleading to him. However, it seems to me that Dixie Carter has no intention of stepping down. And if that's the case, if she's not going to relinquish the majority ownership, and Corgan's not going to get it, and she's going to essentially run the company as she always has, with a new financial guy, a new money mark, for lack of a better way of putting it, then Corgan's going to be taking his ball and going home. Now, that would be fine, except half the roster seems to really think he's the guy who's got the vision to go forward. And Corgan has gone as far as to take credit for the aforementioned final deletion character, final deletion gimmick. He said he had to fight to get the final deletion put on TV. Now, some are also saying that Corgan wants out. He doesn't want to be part of this anymore. Some are also saying that he does, that he's fighting because he wants to own it. My assumption is the latter. I think he still wants ownership. And I think it's going to get ugly because I don't know what paperwork was signed. I don't know what agreements were made. And that is probably what's in those sealed documents for this lawsuit. And hopefully on the 26th, which is, I think, this coming Wednesday, ironically enough, the day of the next Lucha Underground episode, that is going to be something that I think is going to come up. And it's going to be very interesting. So, unfortunately, what's going on behind the scenes at TNA Impact Wrestling is almost as entertaining as what's going on the screen, but they're having a good run too. And speaking of the Fight app, don't think I forgot about my friends at Paragon Pro Wrestling. If you're not checking out their show still, you really need to check it out. There's some good wrestling outside of WWE right now. There is some good wrestling. So if you want to find it, you just got to go out there and get it. Ring of Honor, I'm not going to diss them at all either. Tremendous wrestling. House of Hardcore, which we just I can't speak. House of Hardcore. You know, Dee Snider hosts a show called the House of Hair, which is syndicated. And every time I see HOH, I think of that instead of House of Hardcore. Just a random thought out loud. Anyway, if you are out there on the internet, you can find great wrestling. I don't include Evolve in that because Evolve is too closely knit to WWE. Essentially, I view them as WWE's bitch. So for that reason, I don't include them as a great alternative. Instead, I view them as their bitch. Hi, Gabe. Anyway, I hope everybody enjoys this interview. We'll have Patrick on next week. This way you don't have to hear me talking to myself. Because it can be boring to hear the same guy talk a lot. I believe I am right about everything. It is I, Lamar Rushdie, the Institute for Higher Learning and Education. Signing off.